session is entitled Getting Ourselves Organised. Who's going to lead the pro-EU fight back? For those of you who don't know, my name's Steve Gavin. I'm here today representing Liverpool for Europe and the national group Veterans for Europe, which I'm a co-founder of. I've got to say at the outset, I'm an activist, not a politician.
Yes.
There is a very definite difference, and I believe for this session it's really important that we make that distinction. The brilliant playwright who wrote the Vagina Monologues, Eve Ensler, said an activist is someone who cannot help but fight for something. That person is not usually motivated by a need for power or money or fame, but in fact is driven slightly mad by some injustice, some cruelty, some unfairness, so much so that he or she is compelled by some internal moral engine to act to make it better. I couldn't better describe for it. So, we've been campaigning for a long time now, and the question is still, for me, quite simple. Do you believe that the UK's people, economy and environment are best served inside or outside the European Union? It's plain that the answer for you and me and all the activists like us is that the UK should be at the heart of the European Union. Once that question is answered, we can see that the campaign must continue, but in what shape? At our regular committee meeting just a few days ago, Liverpool for Europe adopted the position that we should continue our campaign with the immediate aim of defending EU27 citizens' rights in Merseyside by engaging with our local politicians. Out of that, Liverpool City Council have adopted a motion of absolutely preserving EU27 citizens' rights as far as they can, which is great. I tell you this to illustrate that European activists in Liverpool and the wider region are not going to stop campaigning. I must also tell you that we will not take a backseat in the future direction of the national movement, and you shouldn't either. Leadership has at its heart legitimacy. The LFE group has a governing committee elected by its activists. Those committee members are themselves activists who spend their time doing all the things that activists do, like activists all over the UK. And like in Liverpool, all these groups, I think, feel terribly let down by the various top-down national bodies who have played party politics and allowed our message of European solidarity and peace to be diluted and misinterpreted. Activists in the Liverpool region strongly feel that we now have the luxury of time. Time to organise, time to consolidate, and time to create a cohesive national grassroots movement whose leadership is drawn from within rather than from party political cliques. Yeah. Further than that, we have an opportunity to clarify the case for EU membership without the dead weight of party politics. Speaking directly to the people, allowing us to set the agenda, in time we think this will allow politicians to re-engage over Britain's European Union membership without the baggage of the 2016 referendum. This doesn't change our view that the 2016 referendum was essentially fraudulent, but the Johnson government must own the consequences of their defeat. And we must point out how much better the situation would be if Britain was a member of the European Union. The bottom line for us at Liverpool for Europe and at Veterans for Europe is that we will continue to campaign with our friends up and down the country as we have since 2016. But the days of being tools of narrow party political groups is over. Let me introduce the panel. I'm going to let them introduce themselves actually. The guy sitting next to me doesn't really need an introduction.
Grassroots, we are the only effective opposition. We are the only ones that are standing up for this nation at the moment. Politically, we've been let down. And that needs to change. It's where we go from here that dictates not only our future, but the future of generations to come. The sad fact is, we're in a war. It's a war, an information war, and it's not one that we're winning at the moment, and it's one we need to get on top of. 6 words have brought us to despair. Take back control and get Brexit done. The reality, we've lost control and we've been done. We all know their slogans were lies, but we failed to unite. We failed to combat them. So now we have to pick up the pieces. We have to unite, and we have to rip those phrases and this government to shreds. How do we do that? We're in it for the long haul now. Schools, we need to start with education. People can't make an informed decision on things they do not understand. The referendum, 15 million people Googled, what is the EU? What are we teaching people in our schools? So we start from the bottom up. Education, it's important. It's not going to be easy. Firstly, we need to look at politicians and what went wrong. Straight off the bat, we come to the same problem we had amongst Remain groups. Unity and working together. It was so important, but we couldn't unite, and that's tragic. And that's why we're here. Yes. The common goal was to stop Brexit. There are too many factions, infights in the political parties between Remain groups. Leave had one banner to unite under, and now they are government. We need to be honest with ourselves if we're going to turn this around. I'm sorry if this sounds brutal, but the harsh reality is we have the tools and the power to stop Brexit. We failed to coordinate, unite, and combat this information war. The positives now. We learned from our mistakes. We have to unite. We have the biggest pro-Remain movement, not only in Europe, but in the world. And we are a force to be reckoned with. A force with enough clout to bring about change. We need goals for those battles, amongst the parties. We need to fight to get back into the European Union, and also proportional representation. If we'd had proportional representation, none of us would be here now. And when it comes to Grassroots, we need to discuss our goals and our way forward, learning from our mistakes. This is where we absolutely must unite. We've got to come together. We've got to come together under one banner and fight for what we actually want. The irony now, we have no option. Take back control. Secure our destiny. Europe matters. I've changed the solemn name from Standard Defiance European Movement to Secure Our Destiny, Europe Matters. Wrapping it up now. We're going to be there at PMQs every Wednesday, believe it or not, until we rejoin the European Union. us to remain, and we want to be in the European Union. That is something we all share, and that will unite us. So on Wednesday, we're there at this P&Q's, and on Thursday, the 30th of January, we have a party outside Parliament. And it's called Party Like There Is No Tomorrow. Please come and join us. It's our future. Thank you. I can't go without this. Can you all join me after 3? In I know it's a church, bollocks to Boris. 1, 2, 3. Bollocks to Boris! Thank you very much.
Organised, as well as all of those of you who have come so far. I know that on my Twitter this morning there were people saying they were coming from the length and breadth of the country, so thank you. Similarly to Steve, I'd like to start by saying how sorry I am that we meet today not to celebrate securing a final say referendum, but to consider how best to fight on. At Best of Britain, I promise you we did everything we possibly could. We warned MPs and party decision makers of the risks of an election, and we showed them what turned out to actually be highly accurate data, forecasting Farage standing down and a Conservative landslide. We then only had tactical voting left in our disposal as any kind of weapon in our arsenal to fight it. And we ran a tactical vote campaign that we calculate changed the votes of about 800,000 voters in our favour. And thank you to those of you who helped push it. We worked night and day for months, and it simply wasn't enough to overturn the lack of cooperation between the opposition parties. They failed us, as Steve said. So I am sorry, but what I can promise you is one thing, that I'm never going to walk off this pitch, whether I have to take a different day job. Even if I have to take a different day job to pay the bills or not, I'm going to remain an ardent campaigner in my evenings and weekends for an open society, just like you. Because for most of us, Brexit was always more than just about the EU. It was about the broad values that underpin it. Openness, collaboration, freedom, and the key one for me, peace. Some of you know I grew up in Northern Ireland during the height of the Troubles, and I firmly believe that the EU is the greatest peace project in human history, and it is now under threat. So we must never ever give up fighting for those values. The concept of open society will always have its enemies, and every generation has to reaffirm its commitment in order that it survives. Laissez-faire approaches and taking our hard-won freedoms for granted is how they're easily lost. But the Brexiteers haven't won everything. They wanted to destroy the EU altogether, and that hasn't happened. It very much lives on, arguably with more popular support than ever before. They haven't hurt it anywhere near as much as they'd hoped. But to thrive, it does need huge reform, particularly around the Eurozone, and that is a whole other conference that we can have and talk about the reforms that the EU needs. But our best defence would have been a well-prepared counter-attack, and we didn't have one. Advocates of Europe and internationalism were deeply complacent and dismissed Euroscepticism at their peril. And as the late, great Charles Kennedy said, Europe is in our DNA, but for far too long, that stood for do not acknowledge. Well, that changes, and we're acknowledging it now. So the enemies of internationalism are feeling victorious at the moment, but this is likely to induce them to push their repressive efforts too far. And that will generate resentment and then offers us opportunities to push back. They're already doing it by enacting a Brexit in the UK that doesn't have majority support. Some of what needs to happen is far too big for those of us in this room to tackle. I am not proposing that it is amongst this room that we have it in our gift to make big structural reforms to the EU, but much of it isn't. So let's take all of the values that we hold dear and the values that are why we've been doing what we've been doing for the last 4 years and take them into every walk of life. Let's join our residents' associations. Let's become school governors. Stand for election to parish council. Do more. Let's campaign for the closest possible relationship with Europe. And let's maintain our relevance by upholding our values and do it with patriotism in our hearts, because we do know that being in Europe really is what is best for Britain. Thank you.
Hi everyone. First of all, thanks very much for inviting me here today. It's great to see so many people who I've met all over the shop. Actually, I think I've never seen you all in one room before. I think so. I mean, I actually want to sort of talk more about the getting ourselves organised bit first. But before I get on to that, I also want to say a huge thank you to yourselves. I joined the European movement full time in 2017. And we saw the network grow from, I think, about 12 active branches, European movement branches that is, to now about 125, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. But where are we? I mean, in terms of how the movement has grown, I just want to say a few more things about it. During the general election, I went for a drink with a friend of mine who used to work for the Conservative Party. He's still pretty close to the Conservative Party, and actually he had heard that he was getting feedback saying that People's Vote and the European Movement activists were actually outgunning the Conservative activists on the ground in key seats. So where they were fielding 18 people in sort of one of their target seats, we had about 40 or 50, which is absolutely incredible if you think about it. That's the ruling party, and we were outgunning them all over the shop. And I think that's absolutely testament to you guys, the amazing job you have done over the last not just a couple of months, but 3 years. So well done. Well, I want to talk a little bit about what the European movement is going to be doing over the coming months and indeed sort of maybe a year or so. And I want to keep this brief because I want to try and get as many questions in as possible before we finish. Last year we celebrated our 70th anniversary. We very much, this is a year of expansion, so we want 70 more years if possible. I fully intend not to be coming back to one of these gatherings in 70 years' time. We will be back in the EU by then, hopefully. Over the last month, since the general election, you've heard that David Rowan did the survey to the branches in which we were collecting feedback as to what is important to the European movement, what should we be focusing on. We also did a membership survey to our members. We got over 1,000 replies, which we're still putting together, which is amazing. But broadly, it boiled down to three main points, which we're going to be really sort of aligning our artillery on for the next coming month and into the year, which is ensuring that the European values and standards are maintained, pursuing a close relationship with Europe, highlighting the impact of Brexit, and holding this government to account. So what does that mean for you guys? Well, we are really going to be investing in the branches. I think one of the faults of the previous, I say regime, whatever you want to call it, was that there wasn't enough training. I don't think there was enough time invested on what you guys were doing on the ground. And if we want to lead the fight back, we have to be absolutely embedded in our local communities now. We have to be the local champions. I think it was Mike who said that if we're going to be the agents of change, we have to, people, they trust, their teacher, they trust their pub landlord. Politicians are the ones who are discredited. So we have to be the agents of change. And that means that we're going to have to be putting on training on local advocacy, how to communicate, how to sort of make links in the community. There's a lot we need to do. So the European movement and the team are going to be rolling out some training for all of you guys. I think that's going to be absolutely vital. We're going to be really, really upscaling our membership as well. We want to be the home of pro-Europeans in this country, and it's something which we've been wanting to address for a long time. But what is vital to us, rather not just as a movement, but as a whole, we need to increase our membership. So if you're not a member of the European movement, go up to the desk out there, hand over your money. We love you guys to join, and I think we're going to be improving our membership offer as well, because we actually have to be an attractive organisation which pulls in people from across the political divide. We can't be insular now, we have to be outward looking. So that's going to be absolutely vital. Finally, as we see, one of the big core issues, one of the things we feel passionately about is EU citizens' rights. And I think that's going to be the cornerstone of our first major campaign. And that's what we're going to be launching next week. So, we're going to be launching that next week. We're going to be doing a conference call at 7 o'clock on Thursday the 30th. If you want information, if you need my email address, come and see me afterwards, in which we're going to be laying out the plan for our campaign on this. And it's not just going to be a flash in the pan campaign. We're going to have to transition now from being a sort of like a frontline political fighting Brexit organisation to something far more tactical and nuanced. And we're going to be doing, well, log on to the call and actually, you'll hear what we're going to be doing. I don't want to say too much now, we're pressed for time. And finally, I want to say, I know that, I think it was mentioned earlier, that we want to get intel on how Brexit is affecting local communities, and this is where you guys are going to be coming in. We need intel. We need to know how Brexit is affecting jobs, how it's destroying communities. Anything you've got, please send it to us. I think Tony Poll, who I've been trying to find today, is doing something which he wants to collect that information. There he is, we'll talk afterwards. We want to do something similar. In fact, we should work together to make sure we're totally aligned on it. And we wanted this to be part of a regular Brexit Watch initiative in which we really are holding the government to account. So this is where you guys are going to be absolutely vital to that. So that's it from me. I want to hand over to Mike Galsworthy, but if you want any questions, please ask us. We're upscaling this year, so this is the start of something special. I really hope you guys can be a part of it. Thank you.
Right, have we all had a good day? Yes. Are we all feeling fired up? Yes. If you strike me down now, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And I know that's a cheesy Star Wars quote, and my sons over there are probably going to cringe, but looking at this room now, it's how I feel, because look at how we have sprung back so quickly. I remember after 2016, there was a wasteland in terms of how we respond. There was nothing going on at the end of 2016, then slowly through 2017, we started forming more groups and coming back together. But Richard, well done. I mean, this stunning here. Well done to Richard. Well done to 150. Yes, stand up for Richard. Come on. And well done to, what is it, 150 groups, did you say here? Christ, that's amazing. And this is like about 5 weeks after the general election result. I mean, this is springing back. This is bouncing back. I have talked to ample local groups that have said they've had meetings since the general election where they've had more people turn out than ever turned up to meetings before. And we can tell you from SMIU and that interface that we've built, that since the general election, all of those local Facebook groups, those pages, they're continuing to grow. They're reaching new audiences. So we now have, as you saw, people starting saying, what's happening this year? We've got a 1-year grid that we're planning. We've got another 4 years before the next general election. We can build. We've got the right substrate. We've got all of you lot, veterans, hardened veterans, that probably weren't as engaged previously in your lives as you have been in the last years. But as you were just hearing before, we know how to turn it out. For street stalls, for marches, for canvassing, for putting in hard work all over the place. That is what we've got, phenomenal resources, if we take stock of where we are now. And that is something that we should all be very proud of. So, and by the way, we've had a shift in the national narrative. But what people don't say is that this is while Brexit and Brexiteers were in government for the last 3.5 years. Theresa May saying how great Brexit would be, falling down. Boris Johnson saying how great Brexit would be. £100 million spent on advertising for Brexit. And they've been losing ground. They've had the bully pulpit and they've been losing ground. But what we need to do now is to, and this is what everyone's coalescing on, we have been let down by some leadership that we had before and some of the political parties, but the thing that has come through and continued to grow is the grassroots. It is that local strength. We do have game plans about building into local communities, binding into those, into residence groups, into food banks, local charities. I was talking with Byline Times the other day about spinning out local news that we control for each and every area, so that we do become masters of those communities. And slowly by slowly, step by step, we say this is a blank slate, and now we are building back to our relationship with the European Union on principle by principle, issue by issue, win by win, starting with EU citizens' rights and free movement. That's what we do now. What's been coming out today. I mean, if I look at this panel here, these are people that I genuinely love and respect and know to be good, hard-working people, the lot of them. I look across this room and I see so many friends that otherwise I wouldn't have met but for the circumstances we're in. Lovely people here that work well together, and that's what we build on out of pure joy. This is my ode to joy in terms of who we are and what we're going to be building towards. And history is long. So there is ample opportunity for everything. And if we're thinking about where we're going to be in the future, let us look back to this time and say, there we were, veterans in the struggle, and at that stage we knew exactly how to build. And that's what we should be looking back at with that identity, because I see how it should all go from here. So let's make it exciting, let's make it fun, and let's enjoy it. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gents, we're here to talk about how we move forward and how we organise. We're going to throw it open to the floor for about 20 minutes. Please don't go on a rant, just tell us what you're going to tell us, 10-15 seconds, and we'll take them in 3s or 4s. I'm looking at my mate Duncan over there from Veterans for Europe, one of my co-founders of Veterans for Europe, and a Sodom campaigner.
Hi, I'm co-founder of Veterans for Europe with Steve, and with the other Steve, I'm part of the Sodom support team. So, two of my best friends on the panel there. Very quickly, Veterans for Europe, we're a national group. We have over 400 members now. Now, you guys in the Grassroots, if you're arranging events, it really messes people up when they see a veteran that's pro-European. It's against the narrative that the other side want to give out. So please, get in touch with us if you're doing an event. We'll put it out to our members and see who we've got local, and we'll get out to you. And it will really help you. Thank you.
I'm Louise from Northeast Europe. Okay, so it's something you and I have talked about a lot, Steve. So being both Northerners, should we have regional assemblies within Grassroots Europe? Because sometimes they have very different needs, you know, like when we were both up in Sunderland and the far right hit the stage and stuff.
Yeah, Sunderland was a hard day at the office, so it's got to be said.
Yeah. So yeah, just would like to revisit that point since the elections.
Just before I give that one to the panel, I just want to say a message that I sent to Duncan and Stuart there before. Local groups should stay in the same shape. Beyond that, regional assemblies should be set up to support local and regional groups, and then a national group to represent us on the national stage. Voila, a bottom-up, totally legitimate organisation that carries the core messages of EU solidarity and collaboration. So I think, for my part, yeah, absolutely regional assemblies.
Thanks very much. Jane from Havering. thanks Steve, leading Grassroots at Sodom. You've been an inspiration in Havering, leave town. It's been really tough. Now I'm going to make a plea. We need strategy. We've got long term, but we do need some good strategy at national, regional, and then local level, which relates to each other's strategies. And I know that's a dirty word perhaps amongst many activists, but we can't duplicate everything every time we do something. So it's great that you've got the boards out there. Let's have feedback as quickly as possible so that we can build strategies from the ground up that relate to the national level too. Thanks.
Well, I mean, yes, I completely agree with the veterans' point, and you know, it's just fantastic to have that sort of counterintuitive voice. So, you know, thank you for all of the work that Veterans Bureau do use them, and better we need to amplify their voice more too. On the regionalism aspect, that is for the grassroots to decide how they want to organise and the structures they want. But what I would add is that I believe the failure of English devolution very much helped lead to a Leave vote. Devolution did well in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, and it stalled in the UK. If you remember, there was that sort of ridiculous referendum for the North East to be self-governing that gave no real teeth to them whatsoever. So of course they rejected it, and the referendum never went any further. You had places where decisions were being taken at Westminster that really ought to have been taken by the local council, district council, unitary authority. For instance, like the Leeds tram is a really interesting one. Eventually it was canned as a concept by Westminster and not by the people locally. So I just think it's absolutely crucial that we do take those values of empowering people and dispersing power to the most local level that we can, because you know, the swathes of England did feel incredibly disenfranchised in a way that perhaps they didn't do so much in Scotland and Northern Ireland.
Okay, veterans and farmers, we need to get behind both of those groups and make sure that Veterans for Europe and Farmers for Europe, or Farmers Against Brexit, are strongly represented over this coming year. I think that's an urgent task that we need to take on that hasn't happened before, and it bothers me. As to the regional stuff, yes, absolutely. I mean, again, we're meeting here in London now. I've talked to lots of the groups in the north, and we really do need more even physical infrastructure there if we can, but it needs its own presence. You know, you need your regional flavours, whether in the southwest, in the Midlands, but very importantly, the north, because of the narratives that come from that, because of the local elections that are coming up in May 7th, I think it is, and for everything related to the narrative going forward. And with regard to strategies, yes, we need those strategies on the national, regional and local level, and we need to work much better on how we provide a gridded out game plan. Not just do what we tell you now, and keep listening for the next instruction, but actually, now that we've got more breathing space and can be less reactive, how we actually map something out together so everyone can get on with a plan and build their own plans, and those plans work together. That's what we're looking for. Sure.
Just on veterans, absolutely. I think one of the things which worked very well for the movement is working in collaboration with groups, and I would really like to see what we can do going forward actually with veterans, absolutely. So that's one thing for sure. Regional stuff, absolutely. I think one of the really crucial things we've got to do is tighten up the structure of the groups to ensure that the regions are listened to, and actually that communication flow is working both ways. I think, again, without wanting to talk too much about the old days, I think that the message didn't always permeate the way it should have done in key areas around the country, and I think the north was definitely an area where I think we could have done better. I know that PV did plough resource eventually up there, but I think it was too little too late. I don't think it worked, quite frankly. So I think anything we can do to tighten up the regional structures in order to have a proper voice for all the nations around the country is fantastic, and I think we need to do. Strategy, yeah, it's an ongoing process. I think, as Mike says, we've got the breathing room now to really get this right. And I think that, again, it has to be a two-way thing. I mean, we're having this internal dialogue with the EM at the moment, but we want to listen to all groups. I think that's really important to learn the mistakes, but also to see which way we point in the future. And one of the things I want to do is make sure that I'm talking constantly to the groups to understand where they want to bring the campaign and what's important to them. So, and again, I was going to announce this on Thursday, and I'm offering to go out around the country and talk to you guys. So if you want me to come down to your local group meeting, just let me know, drop me an email, and I'll be happy to do it.
No, I've been on the front of house, and I'm one of the minor players in this getting this conference organised. But I've been talking to people, and it's really clear that we want you to go away from here with an idea, not that you've just been spoken to and that you possibly haven't had the chance to say that what you wanted to say. The point is, I think we're getting the idea that we've got to run some workshops for people who want to do certain things. They want to learn about dealing with schools and how we get the message into schools. We mustn't go away into our little silos and not talk to each other. So we've got to find a way that we can find out from this conference exactly what the priorities were, and we start working together along those lines, the strategy lines that you've said. But I've listened, and I know this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do my damnedest to try and help organise this so that you go away, you know that we are all going to be thinking, right, the strategy is going to be this or these strategies, and we are going to work as collaborative equals. Okay?
It's Graham Pigney, part of the People's Challenge. This is not so much a question, it is a plea to people. Don't forget, there are millions, literally millions, far more than the 5 million that are generally talked about, of UK citizens in this country who are being denied their EU citizenship rights. If you want to concentrate on some positives over the next few months, those people desperately need your support, your help, because they have been completely ignored and badly let down by the EU.
Right, Sue Wilson from Bremain in Spain. There's been a lot of talk today about the longer term goals. Obviously, we all want to get back in the EU and we want to have a stronger relationship with the EU as possible. But there's been very little talk about the short term goals. And I really want to know what the panel think our short term objectives should be in terms of influencing the negotiations that are about to start and the effect that those negotiations are going to have on our rights and the future of the country going forward. So what can we do to mitigate the outcome of Brexit when it eventually happens? Or the alternative is anyone suggesting we shouldn't mitigate it because we want it to be as bad as possible?
Steve, do you want to make some comments on those questions?
Yeah, well, you know the way we're going forward. We are going to continue to campaign to hold this government to account. PMQ days on a Wednesday, Standard Defiance European Movement. Everybody can join us. So the way forward, we all have to ask yourselves, what can I do? You've got to think outside the box too. What can I do to make a difference? Because each and every one of us, united, we do make a huge difference. And the way forward for us, obviously, you know me, I've got Michael Spicer in the room next door. Now, if you don't know who he is, my feed has gone down. He's the one that feeds Liz Truss. But the way forward is very important. Short term, you know where we are. Parliament, come and join us.
Naomi?
And she's always on the mark with stuff. We don't want it to be as bad as it can possibly be because what we know of Brexit, and particularly a dreadful Brexit, is that it hurts the poorest first and worst. So as much as Schadenfreude appreciates the form of therapy, it might make us feel a little bit better, and I'm assuming that I speak for most of this room that we're all relatively comfortable by comparison to the people that Brexit is going to have a dreadful impact on. And then that brings us to this whole issue of advocacy and how to get wins. Now we have an 80-strong majority of this government, and that means that being angry and just being a mouthpiece on behalf of the opposition parties is probably not going to get us very of our impractical short-term ability to get things through and changes. And that means that we have to think about who within the Conservative movement itself and those that it can be influenced by, and make sure that we are not just being a sort of shrill anti-governmental, anti-conservative voice all the time, because then we won't win and we won't have any influence and we'll just be ignored and dismissed as a mouthpiece for the opposition parties. It will necessitate us having to work with people who aren't natural bedfellows. But I think that there are actually lots of internationalists still within the Conservative Party. Hugo's nodding, he knows the party better than I do. There is the Conservative Group for Europe. I'm sure Dominic Grieve knows that there are still people within his former colleagues who are still sitting MPs who will be very sympathetic to us in not wanting to have too far a divergence from Europe on certain issues. So my plea to all of you then would be, just be careful, just think. It's sometimes better to come in under the radar and be covert with how we campaign rather than being incredibly loud and overt in being critical if we want to actually affect change. So certainly at Best of Britain, that's the approach that we're going to be taking.
Good afternoon, I'm Steve Watson from End of Europe. My alter ego in my blogs for London of Europe is George Stevenson, so you can have a look at those if you're interested. I want to come up with an interesting analogy here. I'm a railwayman. Since 1992, there has been no single voice that speaks for the railway. We had privatisation in 1992. When anything happens in the railway industry, there is no concerted response to that. So what happens is into the vacuum step journalists and politicians. Now some of them do a very good job of explaining, but they all have their own axes to grind. And as a result, there is no fundamental understanding of how the railway works and how things do, and how decisions are made. That is the position that we are in currently. There is no one organisation that speaks, no people who speak consistently for the pro-European movement. So we need to do that. I would also say this is perhaps something that all amongst us need to reflect on how we can help. You know, to paraphrase John Kennedy, ask not what you can do for the pro-European movement, ask what the pro-European... I'm getting it the wrong way around, idiot!
We'll give you that one.
Sorry.
Turkey is red. Sorry, lady over there, please.
Hello, I'm Sarah Patey from Norfolk for Europe. I'm delighted to hear that a number of voices are advocating focusing on the EU27. Just a little idea from Norwich that we've started up. We've started up a Euro Cafe. Once a week on a Saturday, we meet for a couple of hours and we offer a coffee and a croissant, and it's described as a place of welcome for EU27 citizens and others. And we find that people are coming along, EU27 citizens who have been feeling alienated, who particularly out in rural Norfolk, they can meet with a lot of alienation and they are feeling welcome, they can share their worries, and the people like me who are desolate at what's happened can share our sadness too.
I'm Kathy from New Forest for Europe. The title of this final part of the day is Who is going to lead the pro-EU fight back? We've had lots of talk today about unity, we've had lots of talk today about needing a single voice. What can we expect now from all of the different organisations that are representing our grassroots fight? So we've got Open Europe, we've got Best for Britain, we've got Scientists for the EU, we've got the European movement. From the grassroots point of view, what can we expect in terms of how we're going to be enabled and guided to lead the fight back, to make our plans locally, and to be coordinated, concerted in the way that we need to be in the future?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Scientists for EU, we've got Open Europe, we've got European Movement, we've got Best for Britain, we've got Britain for Europe, we've got People's Vote, we've got OFBOT, we've got FFS. I'm actually just saying FFS there because, not for the name of the group. We've got all these different groups. Now, as someone who's worked with Liverpool for Europe, with Manchester for Europe, with the North East for Europe, one of the things that we really need is a coordinated national level. Basically, not 80 people working in what's expensive in real estate in London, spaffing millions of pounds up the wall, and our grassroots campaigners please all work together in one group and then the support.
I am going nowhere. I am here for you, and I can work with these two each and every day of the week.
We can work with everyone that's Remain. That's all of you.
I mean, essentially, no.
Yeah, I've always been.
I mean, but like here today, we are all on the same page, and we need to map out how that structure works all together. We've got Grassroots for Europe as well, strolling casually across the front. But no, it's a really good point because people want unity of message. But in order to get that, as the lady at the back was saying, we need to treat each other as equals, and the decision-making that we do needs to be that broad, wide net coming together, not a top-down narrative that is given to us. But we have the capability for that now. 100%.
Just to respond to the last impassioned speech from the floor, there was an authoritarianism that gripped our movement, and you all suffered from it, and so did we at Best for Britain. We tried very hard to, be good allies and friends with all groups, but some of those groups, and one in particular, made it very, very difficult. I'm sorry to say that a lot of the organisations you listed don't exist anymore, actually. They have shut up shop and have moved on, and we're incredibly grateful to them for the work that they did while they stayed in the fight. I think the balance is going to be absolutely crucial. We do need to be coordinated. We need discipline on our side that those that represent the other side have done effectively for 20 years now. I speak predominantly of 55 Tufton Street and the groups that all sit within that. They have their own unique identities, their own unique legal entities, but actually they coordinate on an almost daily basis and certainly on a weekly basis, and they carve up which brand of theirs is the best one to deliver their particular protectionist, nationalist, ethno-nationalist message at that time. So we don't need to become one organisation with one voice and slip back into the command and control, authoritarian, top-down, thou shalt do this or get stuffed approach, but it is about making sure that we have all of the benefits that come with the efficiencies of shared services and spreading expertise from wherever it comes within and around our movement, while allowing 1,000 flowers to bloom and the right messengers being the right people to take the right message forward, whether it is on a single campaign issue, whether it is on a local, regional one, whether it is on representing a particular grouping within our society and within Europe. So I share your frustrations. We've all heard them, and I think getting that balance right between learning from and being disciplined and structured while not being overly authoritarian and overbearing is exactly the place that we need to get to, and is the one that I hope that we are all going to work towards. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to Steve for chairing that session. Thank you to our panel. Just before I say final thank yous, I just want to follow up on just that final session. I mentioned at the beginning that I'm chair of Grassroots for Europe. I'm also vice chair of the European Movement, and in the past I've been on the Council of Britain for Europe, and at times I felt like I'm having to make a choice about which side I'm on, which organisation I'm putting my support to. Well, I don't want to make that choice. I am on your side. I am not on the side of the people on the other side, okay? We are one side, and that's the way we are going to have to be, and that's why we've got you all together with Naomi, with Mike, with all the organisations here today, because we need to be on one side going forward. Whether it's one organisation or not, doesn't matter, but we have got to be on one side. So that's, as far as I'm concerned, the crucial message.